Hi, I'm Aileen Monroe. Last night, my father stood up at his own wedding and called me worthless. He raised his glass, looked me dead in the eye, and told 100 people I had never paid my own way. They laughed. My siblings clapped. My name wasn't even on the board. But what none of them knew was that I had paid for everything. And when his new bride opened the receipt, everything changed. Or did it? I wasn't going to come. That's the part I keep circling back to. I'd already laid out my excuse. I had work to finish. The traffic would be bad. No one would notice I was missing. But something pulled me in. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that I was stronger now, strong enough to sit through it. The banquet hall smelled like barbecue smoke soaked into polyester and memories. Folding chairs scraped tile every time someone shifted. Overhead, string lights tried their best to make everything feel more special than it was. They didn't succeed. I walked in without being noticed. That's how it usually goes. A cousin was getting her photo taken with Dad and his new wife. She had her arm looped through his, laughing like she'd been raised by him. Maybe she had, in a way. Griselda looked beautiful, fake as ever, smiling so wide it was like she was auditioning for something. No one turned their heads, not one hand raised in welcome. I let the door close behind me and breathed in through my nose. Cheap wine, heavy cologne, somebody's overcooked brisket. Sometimes you show up not for them, but for the version of you that used to hope they'd notice. I made my way toward the tables, passing hugs I wasn't invited into. The place cards were handwritten, cursive, pretty. Every name perfectly placed, except one. My table didn't have one. At the back of the room, near the swinging doors where the catering staff moved in and out, sat a table half full. A staffer glanced at me, then at the empty seat. "You with the kitchen?" she asked. "No," I said quietly. "I'm not." I sat down. The napkin at my place was crumpled, not folded into a leaf like the others. No centerpiece, no small favor gift, just a paper plate and an afterthought. I picked up the napkin and began to fold it myself. Slowly, no rush, no ceremony. They didn't forget me. They just didn't plan for me. A week ago, the family group chat had lit up with emojis and passive jabs. One of my cousins wrote, "Put her next to the exit. She always runs away from family stuff anyway." Another replied, "LOL, just kidding. Kinda." No one laughed harder than the ones who meant it most. I'd left the chat that night. No message, no drama. No one noticed. It's easy to joke about ghosts when you're the ones doing the haunting. Back in the present, Griselda was gliding through the tables like a politician at a fundraiser. She introduced Jonas's sons to anyone who would listen, praising one's promotion, the other's fiancé. She skipped me. A woman across the table leaned toward her husband. "Is she adopted?" she whispered, but not quietly enough. I kept my face blank and took a sip of lukewarm, sparkling cider. It had gone flat. You're not here for applause. You're here to remember how far you've come. That mantra, rehearsed and recycled, it used to work better. I stood to get water. The staff ignored me, as they had every other trip I'd made past the kitchen doors. No one offered to refill my cup. Jonas saw me walk by. His eyes met mine and passed over like I was one of the waitstaff. The laughter from the group chat replayed in my mind, as if someone had turned up the volume. It wasn't that I was angry, not yet. Just tired. There's a kind of quiet that sticks to your ribs. Heavy, familiar. People mistake it for dignity, but mostly, it's just wear and tear. At the drink station, I poured myself a cup and stared into it like it might offer an answer. Let it slide, or let it mark the beginning. I had just started sipping my water when the microphone screeched. The music faded, and all eyes turned to the front of the room where my father, Jonas Bell, stood with a glass in hand and that familiar smirk curling his lips. He tapped the mic twice, cleared his throat dramatically, and began. Family, he said, like it was a sermon. A few clapped too early. The room hushed. I stayed in my seat, back row near the wall. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I already knew what was coming. I'd seen that smile before, usually right before he gutted someone with words that sounded like jokes. He started off light, thanked everyone for coming, said the kind of empty things people say at events like this, how grateful he was, how proud he felt, complimented Griselda, his new wife, for her grace and elegance, and her effortless ability to make everyone feel at home. The applause grew. Then came the part that twisted the knife. He raised his glass and began naming each of his children. Daniel, for being the man every father dreams of. Melissa, who never gave up even after the divorce. Michael, a rock, always steady. He paused. Everyone turned, waiting for my name. And of course, he said, grinning, to Eileen, our little drifter, the one who's still figuring it out. We still love you, even if you've never paid your own way. Laughter, soft at first, then louder. Some people chuckled just to blend in. I didn't move. My hands didn't shake. But my breath caught. I stared at my glass, watching the water ripple slightly with the bass from the speakers. Someone clinked their glass a little too forcefully, maybe trying to end the moment. The toast moved on without me. He kept talking like nothing happened. I stayed frozen. No one at my table said a word. A few minutes later, I walked toward the drink station. I needed a reason to be upright, to move, to pretend. I stood quietly, back to the crowd, when I heard a small voice behind me. Are you one of the cleaning ladies? I turned. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8. Janine Page. I remembered when she was born. I'd sent a gift that no one mentioned. She looked up at me with big eyes, genuinely curious, not cruel. I bent down slightly, met her gaze, and smiled gently. No, sweetie. I'm just someone they forgot to name. A man nearby heard it. He didn't flinch, didn't offer a word. He just turned back toward his drink and sipped. That moment stuck to me, like a paper cut you don't see until hot water hits it. I walked away and found a spot by the staff exit, the only place that didn't smell like expectations and wine. In my mind, I was back in all the moments like this, Christmas cards that left me out, wedding invites addressed to guest of Jonas, birthday parties where no one remembered the cake was my favorite. I cataloged them silently. I remembered every person who had laughed at the toast, every one who had looked down, trying not to meet my eyes, every smile that vanished when I stood. They didn't forget me. They removed me, on purpose. And still, I said nothing. Don't make a scene, I told myself. Don't give them that. It was the same mantra I'd repeated since I was 17, since the first time someone looked through me like I was air. I leaned against the wall and waited. A few minutes later, I caught Griselda's gaze from across the room. She was watching me. Her smile was too bright, too stiff. I nodded. She nodded back. She still didn't know what was happening around her. Not yet. The wife is still clapping for a man who just buried part of his bloodline. Griselda left the table under the pretense of reapplying her lipstick, but she'd barely made it past the hallway when she pulled out her phone. She wasn't looking for anything, just checking, the way people do when they need a moment to themselves. Her email had a new notification from the event coordinator. Subject line, Final confirmation, event paid in full. She tapped it without thinking. There it was, PDF attachment, official header, detailed line items. She scrolled past the guest count, the floral invoice, the catering adjustments, and stopped. Billing name, Aileen Monroe. She blinked, once, twice. Looked again. Her fingers hovered over the screen, unsure what to do with themselves. Then she locked the phone, slipped it into her clutch, and straightened her spine. When she returned to the ballroom, I saw it. That hesitation, half a second longer than it should have been. She smiled at the guest seated next to her, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something had shifted. For once, she looked uncertain. There was a large display board near the entrance that read, "Honoring our supporters." Most people passed it without reading, just another formality. But I'd seen it. So had she. Jonas's name was there, front and center. Below his were Griselda's, then each of his children. Daniel, Melissa, even the twins from his second marriage. Each name perfectly centered, matched with a brief line of recognition. Mine wasn't there. Not even a typo. Not misplaced. Just erased. Someone behind me said, "I thought Eileen had something to do with this." Another voice answered, "Maybe not. Maybe she's just attending out of politeness." I didn't turn around. I didn't correct them. I didn't move. I just stood there with my hands clasped and let them write me off like they always did. Griselda was watching Jonas now, her smile tighter than it had been 10 minutes earlier. He was laughing loud, a hand on someone's shoulder, owning the room. She wasn't smiling anymore. I remembered him saying, "Let me handle the list. Don't worry about the names. I've got it." That was months ago, back when she still believed him. Now she was starting to notice the way people shifted around me, quiet, careful, confused. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was inconvenient. She didn't confront him, not then. But her eyes kept drifting, and I knew what she was asking herself. Why would he leave her off the board if she paid for this? I didn't need to hear the question to know she was asking it. I stood near the dessert table, untouched plate in front of me, staring down into my champagne. The fizz had died. The taste was bitter. Recognition is for the comfortable. Accountability is for the quiet. Across the room, someone gestured toward me and whispered to their friend, "That's the spinster cousin, I think." I heard it. I heard everything. I didn't react. I never do, because silence, when you sharpen it right, cuts cleaner than shouting. Jonas eventually made his way toward me, like he always did when he felt eyes turning. "You're awfully quiet tonight," he said. Casual, like nothing had happened. "You okay?" I looked up and smiled. "Louder than you think." He gave a small laugh, patted my arm like I was a niece at her first job interview. Then he walked away. Behind him, Griselda had been watching. She didn't smile this time. Jonas tapped his glass again. This time, the tone was different. Less celebration, more ceremony. "We've got a little something to share," he said, nodding toward the projector now whirring to life behind him. "A walk down memory lane." Griselda clapped softly, beaming at the crowd. She leaned into Jonas, whispered something I couldn't hear, and took her seat like the proud partner of a man who knew how to run a show. The room dimmed. The first image flickered. Jonas as a young man in uniform, hair darker, posture straighter. Then came his wedding to my mother, smiling, holding hands. After that, photos of the kids. Daniel at the state fair, Melissa at her graduation. Even the twins, the ones he'd fathered after Mom passed. I waited. Nothing of me, not a photo, not a mention, not even a blurry shot in the background. I stood at the back, arms crossed. Everyone else leaned forward, nostalgic. I whispered under my breath, "Not even a cameo." And then, the screen glitched. And the music cut. The photo feed snapped into a grainy video, handheld, unedited, raw. The audio came in and out, but the voice was clear. Jonas, laughing. "Aileen, please. She'll show up, sit in the corner, and then disappear like always. That's why we don't include her." A silence dropped so heavy you could feel it in your teeth. Forks paused mid-air. Glasses stopped mid-toast. Someone coughed, just to break it. Griselda turned her head toward the screen like she wasn't sure if what she heard was real. Her hands dropped to her lap. The smile vanished. A staffer scrambled toward the laptop. "Sorry, wrong file," he muttered. "That wasn't supposed to, technical issue." Jonas stood frozen for a beat, then raised his glass like a man forcing the train back on track. "Anyway, cheers," he said. Too loud, too late. I didn't lift my glass. I didn't move. I stood there like I had in every family photo I wasn't in, right on the edge of being cut out entirely. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't clumsy. It was planned. I remembered 2 months ago signing the check for the venue, sitting across from Jonas as he said, "I'll take care of the rest. Just handle the transfer, okay?" He didn't forget me. He buried me. There's a photo hanging in the hallway just outside the reception hall. It's from 3 years ago, his birthday. The whole family arranged perfectly under a banner. I remembered standing for that photo, but in the printed version, I wasn't there. Not even a cropped shoulder. Griselda sat like stone. Her eyes didn't leave Jonas. Around the room, people shifted in their seats, picked up their phones, checked messages that weren't there. No one dared look in my direction. One cousin leaned over to another. That wasn't supposed to be seen, right? I heard it. Of course I did. I didn't turn. I didn't reply. I just watched. Watched the room fold into itself. Watched the way people looked away when truth came into focus. It hit me like cold water. They knew. Maybe not the whole story, but enough. And they'd known for a while. They were just waiting for someone else to say it first. I stepped out into the hallway, past the catering table, the drink station, and finally the photo wall. I wasn't in any of them. But they were still on display. Jonas and the new wife, the kids with matching shirts, Griselda smiling like she'd won something. A staffer asked, "Ma'am, are you all right?" I looked at her, straightened my jacket, and said, "Wouldn't you leave too if your name never made the guest list?" She didn't answer, just nodded. I stood there for a second, in front of that photo from his birthday. Then I took out my phone and snapped a picture. Not for nostalgia, for evidence. They thought silence was submission, but I've always known it's a pause. The applause hadn't died down. It had just learned how to sound polite. Griselda stood at the microphone now, back straight, voice warm. "I just want to take a moment," she said, "to thank Jonas for everything. His wisdom, his vision, his ability to make tonight so perfect." She turned toward him like he'd built the place with his bare hands. "And of course," she added, "we appreciate those who helped behind the scenes. Quietly, silently, because not all contributions need credit to matter." That part was for me. I stayed seated. I didn't shift. I didn't sigh. I just listened to the room clapping for a lie dressed in good manners. They didn't want to fix what happened. They wanted to smooth it over. And it worked. The room buzzed again, the energy returning like it hadn't all cracked open 30 minutes earlier. They laughed, they sipped, they moved on. But I didn't. Because it wasn't just exclusion anymore. It was replacement. My siblings smiled like they'd never heard the video, like my name hadn't been dropped from the speech. Griselda didn't look at me once during the toast, not even as she said the words meant to seal the wound shut. You cannot heal something you keep pretending didn't break. I left before dessert. The hallway was quieter, cooler. Past the kitchen, through a side door that led to storage rooms. We used to call it the church closet when I was a kid. Every family event, someone stuffed things back here, old centerpieces, childhood toys, boxes with names written in marker. That night, I was looking for air. Instead, I found a box marked M. Monroe. My mother's handwriting. The top flap was torn, but the box inside was intact. I opened it and saw photos, a rosary, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. Aileen. The ink had faded, but the stroke was hers. I sat on a dusty chair and broke the seal. Aileen, the letter began. If you're reading this, I wasn't able to say it to your face. It was everything I hadn't let myself need. She saw me. She knew the cracks, the way Jonas could make someone feel invisible without ever raising his voice. And then she dropped the other truth. She had tried to leave me a share of the family home. Her will had been written that way. But according to her, Jonas contested it quietly, legally, and made sure the paperwork never held. He rewrote it, erased me from the house just like he did the photo, the board, the room. They didn't just forget me, they rewrote me out. I read the letter twice, once for the words, once for the silence in between them. Then I sat still for a long time. I thought about the years I gave, the holidays I worked around, the texts I sent with no replies, the smiles I offered even when I knew they were only ever going to take them and pocket the credit. This was where that ended. I didn't cry. That muscle had long since gone dull. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the letter, front and back, date stamp and all. Then I opened my encrypted app and sent the file to my lawyer with no message, no explanation, just correction. I deleted the sent history. I tucked the envelope back into the box and stood. My shoes made no sound on the concrete floor. Back in the hallway, the clapping had ended. Griselda had sat down. Jonas was telling a story again, something about family values and legacy. I walked past the doorway and said to myself, just loud enough for no one to hear, let them clap. I'm already planning the final act. Someone behind me laughed. That was such a sweet speech, wasn't it? I didn't stop walking. I stepped back into the banquet room with the same dress, same shoes, same hair, but I wasn't walking the same way. Earlier, I'd floated through this hall like fog. Now my heels touched the floor differently. Solid. I made sure of it. I went to the staff station quietly and asked for my name tag, the one I hadn't wanted to wear earlier. The woman behind the folding table flipped through the envelopes, found mine, and handed it over with a smile she didn't mean. I opened it right there. Becca Monroe, logistics assistant. Not just wrong. Small. I didn't say a word. I walked over to a dessert table, borrowed a ballpoint pen from the check-in clipboard, and scratched it out right in front of a tray of cold brownies. I wrote it slowly. Aileen Monroe, principal fund holder. Then I pinned it to my dress and went back in. They always got my name wrong. I finally wrote it myself. Dessert was being passed around. Guests leaned in to whisper over slices of pie, pretending like nothing had happened earlier. But I wasn't the only one feeling the weight of it. Across the room, Dorothea, my cousin who never said much, stood up near the coffee station. That was a sweet little speech, she said, loudly enough for people to hear. But we all know who paid for this place. The noise dropped half a beat. People froze, forks half lifted, wine stopped mid-pour. Dorothea wasn't finished. I was there when the deposit cleared. It wasn't Jonas. That landed. You could feel the shift in the air, not explosive, just heavy, real. Jonas looked like someone had pulled the rug 2 inches under his shoes. He tried to smile, like it was a misunderstanding, but Griselda didn't say a word. She stayed seated, hands in her lap, head down. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The floor had started tilting in my direction, and I stood still to feel it move. A woman I didn't recognize, maybe a +1 from my cousin's side, walked over to me with a soft smile. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you the coordinator for this event?" "No," I answered calmly. "I'm the reason this event exists." I opened my shawl just enough to show her the corrected tag, then let it drop back into place. She nodded, and she didn't look at me like I was furniture anymore. Across the room, Murmurs grew. Small knots of conversation spun up. Words like paid for, donation, left out. Jonas tried to salvage it. He pulled Griselda aside to speak in that low, firm tone he used when he wanted things to disappear without being noticed. She didn't follow. She looked at me instead, and I didn't flinch. I didn't move toward her. I didn't need to. Staying still was loud enough now. Family members who hadn't made eye contact all night suddenly smiled as they walked by. Melissa offered a half wave. Daniel asked if I needed anything from the buffet. A niece, barely 10, brought me a slice of cake and whispered, "I saved this for you." I took it, thanked her. I didn't believe they'd changed. They weren't apologizing. They were recalculating. And I didn't mind. I hadn't come for an apology. I came to reclaim my outline in the family photo. It didn't take a speech, just standing there with the right name pinned to my chest. One of the event staff came by with a clipboard and said, "Ms. Monroe, on behalf of the city's foundation, thank you for your support tonight." I gave her a small nod. "Keep the invoice clean." As I walked past the photo display again, I glanced up at the same birthday picture. Still no me in it, but someone had scribbled my name on a sticky note and stuck it just underneath the frame. Not perfect, but not erased either. They didn't fix the picture, but they stopped pretending I wasn't in it. Dessert had settled, but the tension hadn't. People picked at half-eaten pies, sipped from wine glasses that no longer felt celebratory. Forks tapped gently, but conversation had dipped into a low murmur, cautious, as if the wrong word might poke the wrong bruise. Then Pearl Hartman walked up to Griselda. Pearl wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. She was one of those women who moved like she owned the truth and knew you'd catch up eventually. "I just wanted to say this evening's been lovely," she told Griselda, smiling graciously. "Quick question. Was this your event or Aileen's? I saw her name on the original grant documents." It wasn't a trap, it was curiosity. But it landed like a dropped plate. Griselda froze. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Jonas stepped in, fast and clean. "Oh, Pearl, that must have been from an earlier version. We shifted a few things in the planning process." Pearl's smile didn't shift. She blinked slowly. "That's strange," she said. "Our foundation records show the payment was processed under Eileen's nonprofit." That was it. That was the crack. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The music didn't, but it felt like it did. The room felt tighter. One guest leaned over to whisper, "Wait, wasn't this Jonas's thing?" Another replied, "I thought so, but that woman's been in the back all night. What if she's the real one behind this?" I was close enough to hear it all. Still, I didn't move. Jonas started walking toward Pearl, half laughing, trying to change the subject to a foundation gala they both attended last spring. Griselda didn't follow. She looked at me across the room, eyes sharp and quiet. Connecting dots she didn't want to believe existed. And then Pearl, still composed, turned to face me directly. She walked across the room like it was hers to cross. "I want to thank you," she said. "You made this happen, didn't you?" I didn't pause. "They knew I did," I said quietly. "They just didn't want it known." You could feel the tilt. The invisible shift when attention becomes clarity. Someone pulled up an email thread. Another held up a photo, my name circled in red on a digital invoice, my signature on the line. "So she paid for all this?" someone whispered. "Why was she never mentioned?" The crowd didn't erupt. It settled into something colder, more aware. Jonas stepped forward, eyes tighter than his tie. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said, voice firmer than before. He held up a piece of paper, freshly printed, too clean, no creases. "This," he declared, "is the official invoice. You'll see Griselda's name." Pearl took it, glanced at it once. "That's not the version we approved," she said. The font was wrong. The line spacing off. The lie was too neat. Griselda stood still, staring at the paper, then gently folded it in half and set it on the edge of a chair. Jonas's face flushed. "Why are we making this a public spectacle?" he snapped. I met his eyes. "I didn't make this public," I said. "Your silence did." Nobody moved, nobody clapped, nobody jumped in to rescue him this time. People watched me now, not out of sympathy, out of respect. Jonas walked away, muttering something about people being ungrateful, but his voice had lost its edge. Griselda stepped toward me slowly. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," she said. No tears, no drama, just that. I nodded, not cold, not warm, just enough. Let them feel the discomfort. It's been my +1 for years. And the room, well, it didn't go back to normal. It found something truer. There was a hum in the air, like the room was holding its breath and didn't know what came next. Background music had faded somewhere between dessert and damage control, and nobody had dared turn it back on. Jonas lingered near the stage, sipping what was left in his glass, tapping his fingers against the rim like he was trying to decide whether to talk or retreat. Griselda sat alone 2 tables back, legs crossed, hands folded, looking like a woman who had just finished rearranging the furniture in her own mind. I stayed standing. I'd done enough sitting in the background for one lifetime. The crowd looked at Jonas, waiting for a bow-out line, a speech, something to make sense of the unraveling that had already happened. When he finally stepped forward, the mic squeaked as if even it was tired of his voice. He began, slow and shaky. "Thank you all for coming. This has been, well, a beautiful evening." His tone tried to force warmth, but it landed flat. Even the mic didn't want to cooperate with him tonight. Then Griselda stood up. She didn't rush. She walked up beside him like someone approaching a locked door they finally had the key to. He looked at her, unsure, but moved aside. "I need to say something," she said, and just like that, the room froze again. She didn't speak loudly, but her voice carried. "I didn't know everything when we started planning this," she said, "but now I do. And I won't stand next to something that pretends to be true." Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me. Aileen is the reason we're all here tonight. It was her donation, her foundation, her quiet work that made this happen. Jonas tried to interject, some half-muttered defense, but she lifted her hand without looking at him. "Don't." The guests shifted in their seats. "I saw the payment slip," she continued. "I read the original emails. I even found the letter you kept tucked away, Jonas." That part, he didn't expect. Her voice cracked once, but she didn't break. She was never supposed to be a footnote. Griselda stepped back from the mic. Not toward Jonas, toward me. I didn't move, not yet. Instead, I turned toward the main table, walked up to the edge of it, and laid down the envelope I'd been carrying since the storage room. It was sealed. Inside, the final invoice, every payment receipt, every email thread, and the ledger entries that tied my name to the roots of this entire event. On top, I placed a note. "This is the last line I'll balance for a family that never calculated me in." I didn't pick up the mic. I didn't speak to the room. I just walked. Pearl nodded at me as I passed. Griselda's eyes followed, misted but steady. She didn't chase me. She didn't need to. Jonas stood frozen. The kind of frozen that has nothing to do with cold and everything to do with being cornered by something undeniable. The small talk started up like nervous sparks, quiet and shaky. One cousin whispered, "That was brutal, but fair." Another leaned in and muttered, I've been clapping for the wrong people my whole damn life. I didn't hear them, but I felt them. Near the door, I caught sight of a table with a folded napkin, creased and crooked, just like the one at my table hours earlier. I paused, stared at it, and left it exactly as it was. Let the wrinkles stay. They're honest. I walked out without looking back. The sound of my heels was the only rhythm in the hallway, and for the first time, it felt like music that belonged to me. I woke up before the sun. No alarms, no footsteps in the hallway, no one knocking on the door asking for anything. The room was still. Just me, my breath, and the gentle sound of the heater cycling on. I was in a modest little inn on the edge of town. Clean linens, a working coffee maker, and most importantly, peace. I brewed the coffee myself. No one else's preferences to consider, no extra mugs to set out. My phone buzzed with new notifications, photos from the night before already making their way through town, a few guest posts, some overly polite captions, and a couple of filtered pictures that didn't say a thing about what really happened. I didn't open them. Instead, I flipped open my planner and wrote 3 things. Donate. Close file. Call lawyer. It felt like more than a to-do list. It felt like instructions for how to keep my name mine. When silence stops protecting the wrong people, it becomes the beginning of truth. I sat with that for a moment. It didn't taste sweet, but it tasted right. Later that morning, I walked to a downtown cafe I used to go to after court dates, the same place where I'd eaten too many dry muffins and drafted proposals no one had read. The barista behind the counter looked up and grinned. "Miss Monroe," he said, "coffee's on us today." I blinked. "Why?" He tilted his head. "You were the one at the banquet, right? The one who—" He paused. "Handled things." Before I could respond, a woman at the back waved me over. Lavinia Cross, former colleague, now a board advisor for a statewide foundation. "You handled that better than I ever would have," she said as I reached her table. "That wasn't just class, that was precision." I shrugged. Wasn't trying to perform. She offered to nominate me for an upcoming civic award, something about impact and community development. I declined gently. "Let them keep their plaques," I said. I already rewrote the numbers. Someone at the next table smiled and posted that line to their story. I didn't ask them to. I didn't need to. By early afternoon, I found myself back outside the community center. Not to look back, just to breathe forward. Griselda showed up, holding 2 coffees, neither of them fancy. No speech. No mascara. Just her. "I didn't know," she said, "but I should have." I didn't give her absolution. I didn't need her guilt, but I listened. She asked if there was anything she could do now. "Tell the story right," I said. We sat in silence. It wasn't clean. It wasn't healing. But it was real. Not all gaps can be closed. Some just need to be acknowledged. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. "You made your point. You could have done it without humiliating the family." I read it once, then deleted it. No anger, just the final check mark on the list. I blocked the number, closed the legal folder. Archived the emails. He thinks silence was a weapon. I used it as a scalpel. That's the last time I mention him. Not forgiven, not demonized, just no longer central. As I left the center and passed the banquet hall one last time, a group of young volunteers were folding napkins for the next event. One kid looked confused. His napkin was lopsided, not matching the others. I crouched down beside him and said, "It doesn't have to be perfect. Just don't let them tell you it doesn't belong." He nodded. I stood. I didn't fix the napkin. I walked away. No lingering. No correcting. Just moving forward. The ledger's closed. The story's still mine.